This week on Heroes, Made in the USA, he rides bulls for a living. Charlie Samson is one of America's contemporary cowboys, the rodeo riders. It wasn't enough for Dr. Charlie Clements to survive 50 combat missions as an Air Force pilot in Vietnam. Now he must dodge bullets and death squads while caring for the victims of El Salvador's civil war. For some time, her only identity was that of Gloria, Archie Bunker's daughter. But actress Sally Struthers now has a daughter of her own, as well as 7 children in third world countries she sponsors as part of her work with the Christian Children's Fund.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. Welcome to Heroes, Made in the USA. I'm sure many of us share the feelings expressed by singer Willie Nelson in My Heroes Have Always Been Cowboys. But cowboys don't just exist in songs or John Wayne movies and reruns of Bonanza, no. There are steel broncs to be busted and calves to be roped and bulls to be ridden. And there are cowboys out there doing the job, making a living the hard way.
I'll never forget the first time I got on a bull. The guy that I was with, we went back there and looked over the bulls, and I saw my bull, 102. Here he was laying down, and there's a bunch of other big bulls standing up, and all of a sudden my bull stood up, and he was bigger than some of them other bulls.
Bull riding is for the lunatic fringe of the cowboy set. Paying a $200 entry fee for the chance to last 8 seconds on the back of 2,000 pounds of ornery muscle and anger isn't the sanest way to make a living. But 29-year-old Charlie Samson has been doing just that for 15 years.
All I had was a dream when I first started out, so there really wasn't nothing that was going to hold me back.
Charlie's dream came true in 1982 when he won the National Bull Riding Championship, the first championship for a black rider in any rodeo event. This was in spite of the fact that at 5'4" and 130 pounds, he's the smallest cowboy on the rodeo circuit.
In riding the bull, you control that bull with your mind. There's no way in the world you can out-muscle him because he weighs 2,000 pounds. So what I try to do is get in there and get in a groove with the bull. It's similar to a dancing partner. If you're in time with your dancing partner, it's going to look great.
But in 1983, there was one ride Charlie had that didn't look so great.
Medical assistance, emergency crew, in the arena immediately, please. Bring the ambulance in.
With Ronald Reagan looking on, Samson smashed his face on a bull's head. He spent 21 days in the hospital and 6 weeks with his mouth wired shut. But with the determination of a true hero, he was soon climbing back aboard those monsters and has qualified for the national finals every year since.
It's really hard to explain the reason why I'm still riding bulls after the accident, because it was so close to death, because a normal person would say they had enough. A lot of cowboys would say that's enough. I've been hurt several times riding bulls. I had a bull step on my chest and break 2 ribs, puncture my lung, and I broke my ankle. Now this accident, why are you getting back on bulls?
One reason may be the fact that the championship buckle he won in '82 has eluded him every year since. We caught up with Charlie Samson in Las Vegas on one of the 300 days a year he spends on the road in his comeback quest.
I'm still trying to win that next championship. It's always ahead of me. It's just that you just have to keep your mind made up that you're going to get it. You just have to keep focusing on yourself wearing that buckle, and that's what I see right now. It's myself wearing that buckle.
But the championship buckle has even more meaning now for Charlie Samson. His son, LC, had a severe injury in a car accident last December, and this was his first chance to see Dad in a rodeo since then. But even with LC in the crowd, it was time for Charlie and his traveling partner, Dave Fournier, to get down to business.
When I'm preparing to ride a bull, what I try to do is find out as much information about the bull that I have drawn for that night. Then I just go and relax and try to use my energy to prepare myself for that 8-second explosion. I adjust my rope on my bull's back, make sure that when I pull that rope on tight and take my wrap, that's where I want it to be. And once he's looking out and I'm in a good position to nod for the shoot, a nod for the shoot, and it just happened.
This night, Charlie finished out of the money by less than a second. But in a matter of minutes, he was back on the chute helping his buddy Dave, who tonight did make it to the bell. But cowboys helping other cowboys is nothing new. When LC got hurt, all the cowboys on the circuit gathered round and held auctions and benefit rodeos to help the Samson family with the hospital bill.
Rodeo is like a big family, and everybody pulled together, and everybody tried to help them and did help them.
There's just something about cowboys, whenever one of their own have trouble, they seem to pull together.
It was right after the accident that Charlie had decided to retire from bull riding in order to stay home with his son.
LC started getting better, and I just started programming myself that, you know, this is what LCs want me to do. Don't worry about LC, Charles. You just ride.
And ride he did, just a few weeks ago, winning the Del Rio Super Bowl Championship.
And when you ride a bull, you can go back and tell him some stories. You can go back and tell him how your dad made this bull riding, how people were saying, LC, you know, get better, we're praying for you. And at the same time, things just start falling together where I was able to ride bulls, and thank God I got the strength from LC.
Coming up next on Heroes, Made in the USA, Dr. Charlie Clements risks his life in El Salvador, and Sally Struthers in Africa for the Christian Children's Fund.
In 1982, American doctor Charlie Clements left the United States to practice medicine in the hills of war-torn El Salvador. Fully aware that Americans had been brutally murdered there, something compelled Dr. Clements to put the care of the innocent civilians above his own safety. That something was his bird's-eye view of death and destruction in Vietnam.
I recall flying over large areas of Southeast Asia, sometimes in Laos, sometimes in Cambodia, sometimes in Vietnam, that literally looked like the moon. Acres of pockmarked earth right where I was flying over, and I could see an area being bombed below, and I realized that even as a non-combatant, which my role was classified as, that I was certainly contributing and participating in the destruction that was going on. A lieutenant in my squadron began to tell me about the Phoenix program, and it began to turn my stomach. They would often just eliminate whole villages, and then it would be ascribed to some search and destroy operation. One thing that I thought about a lot was the callousness that I had developed with regard to life itself. I remember specifically picking up the body of a good friend once and not having the luxury to mourn at all, to grieve, not just knowing that those emotions weren't possible. And after one does that enough, you begin to tune out life and begin to treat it very callously. And I didn't want it to happen to me again.
After 6 months in Asia and more than 50 combat missions, Charlie Clements began to change his mind about the war and his participation in it.
I made the decision not to fly anymore on April 30th, 1970. That wasn't a fully developed decision at that time. I just knew I had to leave Saigon and that I didn't want to participate anymore. I didn't know what the consequences of that decision were or how it would unfold. I knew I just had to get out and that I wasn't going to fly anymore.
Charlie Clements was honorably discharged from the Air Force in 1971 and went on to medical school. Then he made the decision to help the people of El Salvador.
I had been promised 3 conditions of service. One, that my medical neutrality would be respected, that as a Quaker I wasn't going to bear arms, and that I could work with civilians. There was a particularly potent offensive against an area called Guasapa, and then the Salvadoran commander came on and said that the slopes of the volcano were on fire, the terrorist stronghold had been eliminated, and I kind of breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, well, I won't be going to that hellhole. And then 10 days later, I found myself marching into that area, and my distinct impression was the smell of war from a long ways off, the smell of burnt flesh, the smell of fields, the smell of charred houses, which were all a result of that offensive in that area, would be my home for the next year. I was as well prepared as anyone could be. I had grown up with a sense of service. I was a distinguished graduate of the Air Force Academy, and as a Vietnam veteran, knew a little bit about a combat zone. But I couldn't help but wonder what I, Charlie Clements, was doing as a doctor in the front lines of the war in El Salvador.
Charlie Clements was the only doctor for more than 10,000 civilians. The people of El Salvador trusted and even protected him. He was a precious resource.
The hospital is just an adobe house with a small fire room at one end for cooking, a tiny room on the other end that has a bed in it, and a large main room with 6 beds. The only furniture is wood or bamboo. Everything is dusty. There's a porch the length of the main room. It has several hammocks and 2 wooden benches. In front is a small banana grove. There are only 4 patients in the hospital. Many come here to have bandages changed daily, but once they're well enough, they stay elsewhere. The medical situation in El Salvador was very primitive and nothing like medicine practice in this country. In an operation, I would be pleased if there was a full team there, someone to brush away flies, someone to give some anesthesia, someone to pass instruments. Those were the realities of medical care in El Salvador.
For Charlie Clements, a 15-year period has seen him come full circle, from the cockpit of his fighter plane to the jungle in El Salvador, where he is providing medical care for the people who need him the most.
Coming up next on Heroes Made in the USA, actress Sally Struthers in Africa and hometown hero Brent Meldrum.
You probably remember her best in the landmark television show All in the Family. She played Archie Bunker's married daughter, Gloria. But anyone who's read a magazine over the last 10 years has also seen how Emmy-winning actress Sally Struthers has used her celebrity status to save many lives. Most of us are well aware of world hunger. We've seen the faces of starving children. But we're not hungry, and it quickly slips out of our consciousness. Sally Struthers has devoted herself to gently reminding us that we are capable of ending world hunger, one child at a time.
If you've ever seen one of my magazine ads for Christian Children's Fund, you've probably also seen a small photo of this little boy, but you've never seen us really together.
His name is Damiano, and he lives in Uganda. Sally began sponsoring him when he was 4, sending 60 cents a day for food, medical supplies, and clothing. Like most sponsors, Sally dreamed of one day meeting him.
He had a terrible disease when I started to sponsor him. The disease is called kwashiorkor, which is one of the severest forms of malnutrition on the face of the earth. Not only was his little belly distended to the point that it looked like he was quite full, but he was really quite empty. Here's the middle one.
In addition to Damiano, Sally has her own 8-year-old daughter, Samantha. Through the Christian Children's Fund, she sponsors 7 other children and speaks for thousands more around the world.
There is such a culture shock when you leave the bounty of America and of your own home and you enter a third world country. I've been taken into villages and slums where I felt like I had stepped into Dante's Inferno. And so I see these hungry, scrawny, sweet children, and they play amongst the dung heaps and the garbage and the squalor. If they're given one good meal a day and medical and dental care, and they get some education, we can break that cycle of poverty. There's an interesting catch-22 in a lot of these third world countries in that school is free, but the catch is that you can't attend unless your parents can buy you a uniform and books. So we'll go into a slum, we'll buy all those kids their uniforms, buy them all their books, and we'll bus them out every day to school and bus them home at night. I truly believe that it's a lack of education that makes a third world country just what it is, a third world country. That once you can educate an individual, he can or she can, through their own resources, find a way to sustain themselves for the rest of their lives.
And how did Sally Struthers get involved with CCF?
All in the Family aired first episode in January of 1971. And by 1972, I was making more money in a week than I'd made in a month as a secretary at a property investment firm in Beverly Hills. And so I thought, I've got to share this money and this good fortune with somebody. My family.
Thumbing through a magazine, Sally saw an ad for CCF. She began to sponsor a little girl from the Philippines named Maritas.
I'd been doing that for about 2 years when they discovered my name in their files. And they wrote to me and said, are you the Sally Struthers? And if you are, would you like to do something more than just sponsor a child?
It is one thing to sponsor a child, but something else to tell other people to do it. So with an investigator, Sally checked out the CCF program.
And they took me into this room that was wall-to-wall file cabinets with thousands of children's pictures and case histories. And I knew that I had to roll up my sleeves and do what I could to help, because there were too many kids with hungry faces in those file cabinets that needed help. It seems to have been a fruitful effort, because in the 11 years I've been national chairwoman, the sponsorship has grown from 130,000 children being fed to now close to 500,000.
If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. This is the philosophy of CCF. They go to villages and discover where the needs are. CCF teaches Africans to make better huts, or Thai villagers to replenish homes lost to fire. CCF builds schools and has programs for disabled children.
These people don't feel like charity cases. We teach them to help themselves. And hopefully by my example on film and in advertising over these last several years, people can really see the satisfaction I'm getting. They can really see the difference that we're making.
And what of little Damiano, Sally's sponsored child?
And Damiano, I can tell you've grown. I'm as proud and happy as any parent right now. I realize how lucky I am to get to hug and to talk to one of my sponsored children. It's a dream.
Thanks to Sally, Damiano is getting food and an education. His distended belly is beginning to recede, and although the ravages of kwashiorkor take years to disappear, Damiano is going to be healthy and strong.
But he has written me some darling letters. Look. And they're all signed Damiano. That's you, right?
My greatest wish is that this work that I'm doing now becomes obsolete.
5-year-old Brent Meldrum from Massachusetts is our youngest hometown hero. Brent and his 6-year-old neighbor Tanya Brandon were watching television when Tanya started choking on a piece of hard candy.
I took a piece of candy, and Brent took a piece of candy, and I was sucking on it, and then it went down my throat, and I turned part red and part blue.
Brent's mother rushed in to see what was happening.
I started to panic, and Brent went behind her. When I saw him going near her, I yelled at him to get away from her, thinking he was going to hurt her worse. And he said, Mom, I saw this on Benson. I know what to do.
You see, what you do is this. When it's up in the air, you go, and then you go. See, on the ground, you push this one thing, then you can. When she bends down, when cough now, then it would cough right out.
Young Brent Meldrum, this week's hometown hero.
From the contemporary American West to the Third World, heroes make good work a universal language.